Hello, Matthias. How are you doing today?
I'm so excited for this very special episode of Single Track.
I know, it's awesome. We have another guest. It's not just going to be you and me just talking nonstop about whatever.
Indeed.
We have a very packed intro right now, so I have a couple notes. Everybody loved our last episode.
You see, the weirdest thing is, the dumber our episodes are, no, that's not true. That's not true. No, we've got
A little there. I think the more relaxed and the more of us that the episode is, like when we're not trying to be too like important about ourselves, it's more fun. And yeah, all the feedback I've gotten has been great. Like,
really,
like, people laughed about jokes I don't remember making, so that's good.
I think people loved the episode because I started off with the Bill Pullman speech from Independence Day.
Exactly. You surprised me on that one. I was happy to see that. That was nice.
Did you see that?
Yes, I saw it. I saw the movie in the theaters. All right. So, like I said, we don't really have a ton of time just to bullshit around. And so
and yet here we are
around.
bullshitting around.
Yes.
This is the core. This is really, this should be our new tagline. We don't have a time to bullshit around, and yet here we are. Single track!
Here we are. Yeah, it's, it's who we are, right? No, we always have way too many important things to do, and then we're just talk about everything. But you did something awesome yesterday.
Well, talking about doing something bullshit.
Okay, yesterday before we recorded. So.
Let's talk about talking about doing something bullshit, and you really should have been spending time doing important stuff. I had an idea a few weeks ago, and then I seized spontaneously a window of opportunity yesterday afternoon, grabbed my two children, drove to the Reeves Middle School dirt oval track, and ran 100 laps around the track like a madman.
And why did you do this? It wasn't just you wanted to run 100 because you like the number 100.
Well, you see, this question it pushes us beyond of our time frame that we have before we bring our guest in, and that is the biggest problem. It does, because there are like 3 explanations. The short one, and that's the one that you're after. Yes. And then I have 2 long ones, because I wouldn't be me if I wouldn't have really long and convoluted.
You wouldn't be you if you didn't have a 90-minute explanation of something that could be done in 30 seconds.
Correct. Well,
I could hear the eye roll. That was amazing.
The short answer is I thought it would be fun and silly to celebrate our Outdoor Society Strava Club reaching 100 members, as well as 100 personal followers on Strava, by doing something with the number 100. And so I found the absolute shortest thing I could do, short of like running 100 meters. I really did it. And so I decided to do something silly, which is run 100 laps around a track. That's 40 kilometers, officially 40. Strava tracked something different, but either way. So that's what I did yesterday. And it was fun. There are long explanations too, but I don't know, perhaps that has to be the after show or something like that. But
that'll be Single Track After Dark.
Doom. Anyway, I was looking for something. I was looking for something fun, and I did it. And it was, something fun and reasonable, and still sort of crazy and momentous. Because what idiot runs 100 laps around a track?
Matthias Eichler. Asked and answered.
And there you have it. New Twitter bio.
There you go. What idiot does this? Me. The Matthias Eichler story.
Well, there's a long answer too, and that kind of leads us into what you did, and that is, currently my life is so crazy, with kids at home and wife working 13 different jobs, and I'm trying to do 14 million different things, that I don't really can afford to take a whole day off, and even just the planning of like some kind of crazy adventure, leaving at 4 and doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit injured and stuff. And so I was missing the adventure. And you don't see that, dear listeners or dear Douglas, but obviously there were air quotes around adventure because it was just a track 1.5 miles from my house. But at the same time, I was looking for something that would challenge me, that would be sort of big and bold in the most doable sort of way, right? I mean, mileage-wise, certainly it's one of the longest runs that I've done all year, perhaps even it is, right? And so I was looking for something like that. I had been a little bit injured, so I wanted something easy and not some kind of crazy mountain thing, which also made it fast and doable. I was, after lunch, ran out. Before dinner, I was back, and I was still in a shape that I could cook the kids dinner. Oh,
you cooked your kids.
That was a very, very hard sentence for me this morning. So anyway, so that's what I did. But you went on a real adventure, and that's way more exciting than running 100 laps around the track. You got some wind.
Yeah, I had messaged you earlier, and I asked you a very innocuous question of, is it better to run a loop or do a double summit? And that's all I asked you. And you responded back, double summit, because I knew you would, and I just wanted to make sure, unless the loop was something good, but half of the loop would have been on the road. So what I did is I did Mount Washburn in Yellowstone twice. It's one of the tallest accessible mountains, like from a roadside trailhead in the park, and it tops out over 10,000 feet. And so I ran from the south trailhead to the summit, down to the north trailhead, from the north trailhead to the summit, back down to the south trailhead. And so it was about 13 and a half miles total, and 3,000 feet gain. So it wasn't an insane day, but up on the mountain, it was just ridiculously strong winds, to the point where I wear these outdoor research hats, and I never have problems in the wind with them blowing off. Like, they're really snug on my head. And this was the first time that I was like, oh wow, I had to tighten them extra tight. Like, I had to tighten my hat one more clip on, and it was just bizarre. I was shocked at how windy it was, but I did it. Saw marmots on the run, saw a bear. It was a beautiful day. You could see the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone all the way out to the lake and all the mountains around the area. And I talked to a few people, and they thought I was crazy. But
did you find any answers?
Did I find any answers?
Did you find any answers? Blowing in the wind, my friend.
No, but the wind was whispering Marys.
Dum, 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 da, 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 da.
I'm glad that we're referencing songs that are way before our generation.
Hey, speak for yourself. I'm old.
You are a Gen Xer, so
see?
Thanks for doing nothing.
Well, at least you acknowledge me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true. No, it was a good run. I think it was.
You fell again.
A good challenge for me.
You fell again.
I slid. I didn't fall. I slid. I think there's a big difference between falling and sliding down a bit and then catching yourself with your hand. Like, I didn't wipe out. I slid and put my hand down and skinned my hand a little. I don't consider that a fall compared to my normal falls, where all of a sudden I'm on the ground and I don't know how I got there. Like, this was like, oh, that rock was loose.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm going down. I got to put my hand down a little to catch myself so I don't just slam my hip into the ground.
Right.
That's what it was.
The way I slid into that puddle when we were running the north slope trail.
Yeah. It was exactly like that. Where it's like, well, no one saw. Okay, cool.
It's like, oh shit. I'm like, okay, well, let's keep running.
My bear spray did come out and slammed and like bounced down the rocky hillside, and I was like, oh no, like what if it bursts open? But it didn't, so I was happy.
Amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a good run. It was my first week at elevation, like of doing elevation training, and I did a bit more than I expected, and I was feeling it yesterday, so yeah.
So this was like a combination, right? I mean, we've talked a little bit about elevation training and what to do, because it was not just going for vertical feet, but this was also an adventure mixed in.
Exactly.
Which changes a little bit the dynamic on how fast you move, how far you're willing to travel, and probably also the kind of recovery that you have. How did you feel afterwards? I mean, did you feel like you needed days off, or where are you at?
So I took yesterday off because the main thing that I discovered yesterday, or on my run the day before, was that my food and hydration game is off for high elevation mountains. I went into it as if we were running out at the Capitol Forest for a half marathon. You know, if you do that, if you do the aardvark loop, you're getting about 2,000 to 3,000 feet of gain, right? Like it's the same thing. And so, you know, when we did a similar one to that, I had just my handheld and a couple of goos, and I was okay.
Right.
With this one, you know, I didn't bring enough food with me. I definitely noticed that. So my recovery yesterday was a little more difficult than I wanted, but you know, at the same time, I was planning on taking the day off anyway, and you know, just stretching everything out. And so, you know, I'd had a week of 8,000 feet of gain basically and 50 miles. And so I wanted a day off. So I think, you know, I needed a day off for sure, but today I'm already kind of itching to go back out. So immediately after, though, I came back, I ate some more food, I drank some noon tablets, and then I felt good. You know, I wasn't super tired. So I do have one aside on this whole thing, though. I did hit a skunk on my drive back.
You hit
outside of the park.
Okay.
I hit a skunk in my car, and I was like, oh, no. Like, first of all, I'd never want to hit any animal, right? Like, that's just the shitty thing to do. And so then I was like, oh, no, I hit a skunk. And so I parked in the garage when I got back, and then I unloaded the car, went back out, and the garage had a faint whiff of skunk smell to it. And I was like, oh, no. So I immediately parked it out on the street. We had thunderstorms that night, and so it washed itself. Then I went and got a car wash, and so hopefully it's not going to smell like skunk anymore. But that was like, that automatically took all of my thought away from the adventure that I had and kind of how I felt. And then I started being more concerned, like, what if my car forever smells like skunk? So
this is a perfect segue. But I do have one more question about your elevation skunk car. There's a headline. About your elevation training, the one aspect you compared the Capitol Forest half marathon to your Mount Washburn. Did you in kind of your nutrition game and stuff? Did you compare it in time spent on feet? Because I think that's the interesting aspect too. That sometimes when we go on those adventures, we sort of miscalculate just because the difficulty of terrain or the beauty of the vista makes us go slower, and then we end up being a lot longer on our feet, and we just need a different nutrition strategy for that, even though mileage-wise and elevation-wise, it didn't reflect that.
So I went in thinking I was going to be on the trail for 3.5 hours.
Okay.
That was kind of my, like, okay, that'll be slow, but that's fine. Like, it's also not super slow. It's a good enough pace where it allows me to jog or walk up the hills on both directions and just kind of get into it. And so I try to formulate a strategy off that. So I brought I think 4 goos with me and 2 stroop waffles. Okay. And I brought that with me, but what happened is I then got out of my game because of the wind at the top of the mountain. Then when I slid, it was at the bottom near the other trailhead before my way back. So my adrenaline then pushed me back up the mountain. Then once I was coming down again, I was just like, well, I'm just going to be done. So I wasn't smart about it. I anticipated that much. I had 2.2 liters of water with me. I had over 1,200 calories of food in my bag. Like, I was there. I just didn't take care of myself.
Right.
Because it was, well, this is a reason why I'm doing this. and why don't I just continue instead? So I think I mentally planned it well. I just didn't actually stick to that plan, which is a good thing to get out of the way now, where I could say, okay, I now remember what that's like, because it had been a while since I had done something just supported on my own like this. So, if I'm hiking or I'm doing an out and back, it's just up and down. But this was up, down, and so
right.
this was a bit more in tune with what the rut's going to be, as far as having to slog up and then coast down and then slog back up and coast back down. And so now I know, like, I need to set a reminder, every 45 minutes to an hour to consume some water and eat some food. And if that slows me down a little bit, so be it. But at least I'm not going to have that difficulty and kind of that mental collapse. I also started getting, go ahead.
No, I'm just curious. How long did it actually take you? What you sort of anticipated, not your moving time, but your actual time from car to car.
3 hours and 18 minutes.
Oh wow! Okay, so that's good.
I barely stopped.
Okay.
I was basically moving the whole time.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Because then because that's my experience in those long ones, right? That we sort of have an ideal time frame in our head, and we plan for that ideal time frame. And even if you're conservative, we sort of don't bring nutrition or water or whatever, either mental or physically. We're not really prepared for the what if, right? Mm-hmm. And then you are slower, and then you're sort of running on fumes because you didn't really prepare for this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, case in point, I got a big sunburn yesterday because I didn't really prepare for the sun to actually come out, because when I started running, it was very overcast and cool, and then the sun came out, and then it also took me over an hour longer than I wanted to, which meant I was over an hour longer in the sun.
Yes.
In the afternoon heat, right? If I would have prepared for that, I would have brought sunscreen and anticipated that. But I am an idiot, so I didn't bring that, and now I have a sunburn.
Well, it's one of those live and learn things. I mean,
is it though? Do we really learn from that? So I mean, let's be serious. It's one of those.
No. As far as
and realize
I forgot,
that's who we are.
I forgot sunscreen too, but it was cloudy, so I was like, whatever, And I, instead of running a tank top, I ran a long sleeve or a t-shirt type material. So not a cotton one, but a running short sleeve.
You ran in t-shirt type material?
Yeah. I couldn't think of what it was, but I ran in just a short sleeve shirt. Sure. I could not remember
the word t-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So you said t-shirt type material.
Like I said, it's we're not smart, but we're entertaining. Speaking of entertaining, we actually have a guest this week that we contacted a while ago to come on the show, and she is an incredible runner and outdoors enthusiast, and so we will be bringing her on the show in just a couple seconds.
It's summertime, and with our upcoming guest, we are having adventure on our mind. Summer vacation, road trips, adventurous calling in the mountains or at the beach. You need an adventure partner that is dependable, trustworthy, and there for you when you need it most. With mobile and online banking, you are in charge of your cash, and with their incredible service, they are there for you if you need help from anywhere in the world. I'm talking about Heritage Bank, your partner on the road. We love Heritage Bank. A few years ago, I was wandering the airport halls looking for a souvenir for my kids at one of those weird, mediocre gift shops. I know. I was on a business trip, didn't have time to find something cooler. And apologies. Anyway, I found a trinket, don't remember what it was, made my purchase, and within 5 minutes got a call from the bank. They were concerned about the transaction since it was out of the ordinary, and they wanted to make sure it was really me. I appreciated that. I confirmed a few details, was up and running again. What was really cool about this was that I was talking to a real person. Not a robot, not some weird robot in a call center. It was a real person. That's the kind of care and interaction I appreciate, and what I think makes Heritage the best bank to take on the road with you. So if you're thinking summertime, even though the weather is not that great out, if you're thinking adventure, think Heritage Bank. Visit heritagebanknw.com to find their closest branch. Stop in, say hi, and see for yourself what makes Heritage Bank your best adventure partner. They're my adventure partners. I love them. Thank you, Heritage Bank, for sponsoring this week's episode of Single Track. And now, back to the show with our special guest.
All right, welcome back. That was a great commercial read, Matthias. Thank you. We have been joined with a guest. It's finally not just you and I talking. We are joined by Morgan Sjogren, the running bum herself, who has written books, a Bears Ears expert, and travels the world now running. How are you doing today, Morgan? And where are you?
I'm doing great.
Where are you coming from today?
If I had $1 for every time somebody asked me that, I would maybe be able to keep traveling the world. I am somewhere in the Four Corners.
Somewhere in the Four Corners. All right.
Yeah, I think a better question. I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this, because sometimes I don't always like disclosing my location. Or like, I mean, I've been in 3 different states like multiple times in 1 week. I think a better question is like, what are you reading at this point? Like, yeah, that's more stable.
That's fair. So what are you reading as a writer and as an author and a prolific reader on things of the West and travel, and also Hunter S. Thompson, apparently. What are you reading right now?
I am reading Wind in the Rock by Anne Zwinger, and I just started it, and it's so beautiful. It's a really cool book.
I will have to check that out. I typically see what you're reading. I'm like, oh, there's another thing I need to add. So
my list never ends.
So we have invited you on the show because you're a runner, you're a writer, you're an outdoors advocate, and you are just a voice that we both like to see on our social media and online. So you have written a book. I think this is the easiest way for us to ease into who you are. You've written a book that I think it's a classic, and I am, as somebody who's written some books, and Matthias has too, I am very envious of this idea, because it's a beautiful idea of combining 2 things that we talk about on this podcast: adventures and food. And the book you've written is called Outlandish. And if you can tell us a little bit about that and kind of what fueled that and why people should get it and what they should expect. So everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when, the first few months when I was living on the road, when I would actually have human contact or hang out with friends, I'd usually pull out a stack of tortillas and whatever random ingredients, whether it was something I foraged from a hillside or a can of cold beans, because I didn't even have really a good stove to heat things up, and I would just make a burrito. And I'd always joke like, well, if all goes well, I might be able to make a cookbook called 50 Shades of Burritos and live off it until I figure out the next thing. And I was like only halfway joking, because I had actually thought about doing something similar since I was a child. And when Velo Press approached me about doing a book, I knew that they had produced some really beautiful and quality cookbooks for athletes. But I really wanted to do something more than a cookbook. I love food, and it's a big part of my life, but I'm a writer, and I knew I had these incredible stories, and I really thought the fusion of the 2 could bring readers into the adventures, and instead of just saying like, hey, these are some things that happened to me, really help people reframe and reshape their own adventures and experiences, and bring food into the equation, and see how, whatever's available, whether that's your location or the ingredients, it can all be part of your own story and be a lot of fun. So really that was the premise behind fusing the 2, the cooking and the stories.
Yeah, it's absolutely great. It's an entertaining read with the stories, and then exactly like you said, you then throw in kind of that recipe that goes with that adventure. And I was driving down from Washington to New Mexico, and and we just decided to just use your cookbook kind of as inspiration. And
Cool.
you go to the store and you just find the local spices, you find
Right.
all those things, and it added that element to the trip where you feel a deeper connection to the region.
Absolutely.
And I think being able to inspire that for other people is just it's an outstanding thing. In that book, is there one recipe or adventure that you enjoyed more than the others?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I enjoyed all the recipes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they're in there. Like I'm not a single favorite food person unless I guess burritos or maybe ketchup. But the Tundrathon triple was just one of the most fun, simple, kind of innocent days in the mountains I've ever had. I think the entire group, from dogs to humans, we never really stopped smiling, and we were singing on different summits and laughing our butts off, and cramped inside of a truck before and after, just a bunch of sweaty, dirty bodies. And just really, I mean, we were all actually like in our 30s, but like it's as close to just being like the days of youth. Like that's a moment I'll look back on forever and smile.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that feeling coming across in the writing too, of just that, it reminded me of the movie The Sandlot, where they get to play baseball over the fireworks, of just that moment you want to hold on to for so long because it's just so perfect. And it seems like you have a lot of those moments, especially recently. Before we dive into your adventures around the Southwest and Patagonia, I have a question about the OR show.
Yeah.
Recently, you were in a cook-off, a burrito cook-off, and it didn't look like it went to your day.
They paired me with a real chef. He's Adam Dooley is the head chef of the American Beer Association, which was an honor to meet him because I've been a beer aficionado for a decade, and really love cooking with beer, and that whole scene has really inspired me, and I love pairing food with beer. But I'm definitely not a trained chef. I did make all the food that is photographed in that cookbook, and it came out looking pretty nice. But when given 15 minutes, I mean, I made French fries for the burrito. I'm okay with losing because I stand behind my product. It was a delicious burrito. Okay. I just didn't, his burrito was like, wow, you could serve that at a restaurant.
Oh, that's crazy.
He's a great guy.
So, you also at the OR show, you were one of the few people that I saw that was constantly escaping out into the wilderness during that. And I think that speaks to a bit about just who you are as a person, and how the outdoors has influenced you. Like, when did you first start going outside, and when did it become this place of healing and happiness?
I would definitely say my entire life. I grew up in the Inland Empire of Southern California, but my grandparents lived at the beach, and probably, as soon as I was allowed to leave the hospital, my mom and dad were taking me out to the beach and out on the sand and along the sea. I have tons of baby pictures there. So, weekends at the beach was my family's thing. And as me and my brothers and sisters grew older, my parents were really big on local adventures. So we were probably within an hour striking distance of the mountains, the desert, the ocean, and then just a tremendous range of desert hillsides where I grew up. And so we were just always, weekends were for family bike rides or hikes, or, I started running when I was 9. So that gave me my first taste of freedom. I would run with my mom initially, but as I got older, even late elementary school, I would just take myself out for a 4-mile run in the hills. And so I just had that, that's what I loved to do. I was never go to the movies on weekends kid. It was, what's this weekend's adventure going to be? And strangely enough, since I was pretty young, anytime the weather was nice enough, and this lasted from elementary school to high school, I would sleep outside in the backyard a lot. I really, I liked that sense of freedom of being outside, even in suburbia, interacting with the ground and seeing the stars and the weather patterns. And it really helped me imagine myself in more exotic locations, and at the same time fall in love with where I'm at. And I think it's pretty obvious that has translated into my life the way it is now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And right now you're basically travel around and live out of your Jeep and see not just the country, but also the world, right? You just got back from what looked like an amazing running trip, and I was telling Matthias about this, that you got to go run down in Patagonia for a race. And
Yeah.
that just looked insane. I know it wasn't quite the adventure that you were expecting it looked like, because there were no running signs. So
Yeah, it was really interesting. So, my friend Monica, who I used to run with on the Mammoth Track Club a couple years ago, she's also a rider. We got the opportunity to go together and run a race in Chilean Patagonia outside Torres del Paine National Park. We elected to run the 25K, not the marathon, because we're all about having fun. We didn't really feel like killing ourselves down there. But we also anticipated that we would do some running on the other days. One of the funny things that happened was the trip was a week long. It wasn't really until we got on the plane that we looked at our itinerary and realized that the travel was 40 hours each way to get there to our specific location. So we were actually only in Patagonia for 4 days, which is crazy. Like, wow. Yeah, I mean, most people complain about having to go drive 8 hours to get to a race. We traveled for 2 days and had 4 days, raced, and went back the other way. But we did get to do some incredible running outside the park. It's interesting. There's no running allowed in Torres del Paine National Park. And we tried to get to the bottom of it, and there wasn't really a concrete answer. It just seems like it's the rule. So that's what I'm going to go with for now. But we hiked to the Torres del Paine Towers, and, I love running. It's weird to be told what to do. I struggle more with that than the actual hiking part. But both of us it was so glorious, so beautiful. It was probably one of the last days of the season as Patagonia heads into winter that people were actually out on that trail. And it was the first time the sun came out during the trip. And gosh, it's as beautiful as the photos make it out to be. Like, it's worth it to travel that far to be there even for one day, I would say.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it looked like it just looked amazing. And I constantly see pictures of people going down there, and I know the popularity of traveling down to that region has gotten a bit more and more. Did you feel that the environment for like outdoor tourism is positive down there, like in a more positive direction than maybe nature tourism in America is going?
Absolutely. Actually, I was there. So fall is shoulder season. So it is the least crowded time of year, and it definitely wasn't packed. I know there's times where it gets busy. Although, that's just the way of the world. The world is also getting busier. Some of the things that I noticed that were just like stunning to me was there were signs telling people stay on the trail. Making it very clear, like, do not leave the trail to go take a picture, because that causes damage to the wildlife outside the trail. Instilling those ethics through education, and reinforcing it. There were leave no trace signs everywhere, and they were beautiful and hand painted. So you actually really wanted to like stop and look at them. And I didn't even find a single piece of micro trash when I was down there, which is incredible. That's pretty hard to speak for even in our national parks. And then, the place that I stayed at was an eco resort. So everything was built off the ground. So it didn't, interfere with the ecosystems on the soil, and really like used like local ingredients and connected with the landscape. It's a business. And I think there's this kind of black and white attitude about it in the US that like, if you're trying to make money off of tourism and recreation, that's bad. But it's bad if it comes at a cost to the landscape. And of course, there's always a cost just by humans being alive. But if we could see it as a way to like get people to care about and invest the landscapes more, we could create a positive ecosystem for recreation. But it's all just really polarized right now, I feel like, in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the many reasons why I think I follow you online, is because of that similar view of there is an appropriate way to do things. There is a way to allow for tourism without blocking access for everyone. And that's something that Matthias and I are always talking about, because he's Matthias, you can tell your story of why you feel that way, and ask some questions, man.
Well, I'm still hung up on the burritos thing. I'm really hungry right now, and so I need a burrito. I'm from Europe, and so I experienced the outdoors in the Alps where
Oh, I love
we
the
don't,
Alps.
yeah, we don't have wilderness anymore,
Right.
and yet we also don't have. We have the valleys and the mountains managed by local jurisdictions who, I don't know, they have more of an understanding of a sense of place and care for how places should be developed or should not be developed, and how they should represent the people who live there, and how tourism should coexist, and at the same time also make it possible for the people to actually live in those places, because tourism brings so many dollars into those communities and actually helps them be sustainable. And so it's just a very, very different way of approaching land management.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I definitely, I did a run through the Alps a couple years ago, and when you would drop down into the valleys, and there was grazing going on, and farmers and people were living there, and yet you definitely got the sense that the place was so well taken care of, and it was working with the landscape, not decimating it. Yeah, definitely a different attitude.
Exactly. So let's talk about the burritos again. I need a good idea. I told you I'm hung up on this. Give me a good. No. You asked the question that I wanted to ask, but I would have asked it differently, because it's hard to ask if you have a whole book on recipes on what's your favorite, because obviously you include them all because they are your favorite. But
depends on the day too.
That's exactly that was my question. So what's the current one? So if you would invite me over and you would cook me a burrito this evening, what would you cook me? What would be in the burrito?
Well, this afternoon I had a burrito with leftovers, and it had ranch style beans, which are kind of like a spicy cowboy bean you get at the grocery store, with sauteed onions and jalapenos, some sauteed sausage, and corn and rice.
I mean,
Very simple.
That sounds amazing, right? That's exactly the kind of food that one needs when you're living on the road, when you're super active.
It's hearty, but you get nutrients. Oh, there were sun-dried tomatoes in it as well.
Nice.
Just simple and affordable and tastes good.
That sounds delicious. I like it. We have to put the recipe in air quotes in the show notes, because I'm pretty sure you made this up on the fly.
Perfect.
I like it.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about the book, is you could then, if nothing else, we were just getting ideas of like, oh, okay, well, that sounds good, but I'm actually craving this. And then all of a sudden you realize like how spur of the moment you can be with everything, and just how fun this can be. And that's why I think this is such a great idea of an adventure book, and really just being able to, I mean, we're now super hungry, so mission accomplished, right?
Mission accomplished. No, you nailed it. That was absolutely the goal, and even with the guidebooks I've written, I mean, some people are definitely like, tell me what to do, and you can hire a guide or go on a tour. But guidebooks and books that are meant to inspire through adventure are just sparks, I mean, the best things happen out of your own imagination, and inspiration, even for the most creative individuals. We always are borrowing and learning from others and from the environment. And really that's what I hoped it would do for other people. And it's been really fun to see some people sharing their creations on Instagram and messaging me about the different things that it's led them to. It's super rewarding in that way.
And obviously you appreciate that feedback. Not to dive too into the weeds here, but there's also been with your guidebooks and things, there's been a pushback against you on social media, and you don't have to speak to this if you don't want to, but I find it odd, because you preach leave no trace constantly. You preach appreciation of cultures, and then there's this pushback that you've been facing, and that I think a lot of us face when we're out there really putting our passion and trying to inspire, and then you get these hate messages. And I'm wondering, like, how much of that impacts what you do versus how well can you just shut that down and move on because of the positive feedback you're getting?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it never affects what I do. It has affected how other people have worked with me, which has been really disappointing. But again, you can weed out who you really want to align with and who really has your back. It's been a head scratcher for me too, more than anything. I try not to dwell on it because I really like to focus on positive momentum. And I have a lot on my plate and a lot I want to work on. Yeah. And I really don't feel like these types of attacks are, or whatever you want to call them, they're not benefiting anyone. And even responding to them isn't achieving anything. I mean, there's a gut reaction, I think, to want to defend yourself and explain yourself, but it just fuels their fire. It's just really, I'm willing to have productive conversations with even people who disagree with me. And usually those are enlightening for both parties and really productive. But just, I can't figure out. I think people are just bullies, to be perfectly honest, because I actually I had some initial pushback and kind of, skepticism about the guidebook, but once it came out, I haven't met any negativity, even amongst groups that seemed against it in the first place. It's all just the facts, and it takes people to well-known places in a safe way, and it helps, with education of an area that has more traffic. And at this point, our government has chopped away funding to help people navigate it safely.
Absolutely. And the reason, and the area we're talking about right now is primarily the Bears Ears area, which has been, since Trump was elected, it's been in the news. And I mean, that's when I first stumbled on your social media account, was during this, is I was looking for information on Bears Ears, and you were the leading person out there trying to educate everyone on it. And
well, that's interesting. I would definitely never claim that. Some other people put that under my name. I mean, I really feel like I stumbled upon it, and that was a place that I was really curious about. And so I wanted to learn. And so I was willing to share what I was learning with other people, because I realized not everyone was on the road and has much free time and could get out there. And so I would never, calling yourself an expert, like I will step away from that. But what I will say is there weren't a whole lot of people just spending almost their entire time in a year out there. And so yes. I was exploring it and willing to share my information with anyone. That would be the way I'd present it.
Well, I think that is a better.
Yeah, and that's not to counter you. I think that's fair. That's what some of the criticism has been, and I think it's important for me to talk about this because that's not something I put on myself.
Yes.
And so a lot of the pushback has come from stuff like that. Unfortunately, someone writes a headline and then it's sensational and it angers everyone. And yeah, I've always said, I'm happy. I'm open for interviews. I'm happy to talk things out. Talk to the real person, not the secondhand source.
Exactly. Not that perceived interpretation of everything.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, as everything was going on, you were sharing what was going on the ground itself. And that's something I think Bears Ears is someplace that most people don't know a lot about. So, for Matthias and I, we were looking at going there after doing rim to rim to rim. And then we decided to swing back toward the Tahoe area instead of driving through there. So what did we miss?
Oh God, you missed a lot more. I spent a lot of time in the Sierras, and a lot of time in Tahoe, and they're beautiful areas. But Bears Ears, my gosh, I mean, you wouldn't have been able to see it all in a few days either. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, Bears Ears ranges from 11,000-foot mountains to high plateaus and intricate canyons to sheer desert with towers of sandstone. There's the San Juan River runs through a portion of it. There's incredible hiking, there's climbing, one of the densest archaeological and cultural areas. Like we're talking 10 sites or artifacts per square mile.
Wow.
Over 100,000 within the original boundaries. And it's just one of those places where, especially if you can get higher up, you can see so many of the notable landmarks, geological landmarks throughout the kind of Four Corners region. You can see Sleeping Ute and Shiprock and the San Juan Mountains and the La Salle Mountains and Monument Valley. And then in any of those locations, you can pick out the Bears Ears Buttes, which is the namesake of the national monument, and the Abajo Mountains, which are the 11,000-foot peaks. So it's just incredibly, it's a vast area. It's huge, but actually given the variety of terrain, there's a lot pushed up together in one area.
It seems, just from an exploration point of view, that it's endless, and that there is no wrong turn to make, because you're always going to find something that's just that's just impressive. Especially, you know, once you get to the petroglyphs and everything, you know, you're walking through this historical, culturally significant area that we are so out of touch with, because, you know, most of Western history started in 1804, right? Like, as soon as Lewis and Clark came, that's when everything mattered.
Yeah, and this is like 1,300 years old or more.
Exactly. Is there for people interested in going down there, is there a place that you say is a good jumping off point, like a great introduction, or is it really just open your guidebook, see what speaks to you, and go explore deeper?
I mean, taking the guidebook and seeing what speaks to you on your trip and your own abilities and the time and what you want to do, whether it's backpacking or car camping or roadside sightseeing. You know, I mean, I know Ed Abbey would turn his nose at that, but not everyone can get out and get into a canyon. And I still think there's a lot to be gained. You do miss a lot if you're just in the car, but it's still beautiful. And I think people should go do that. I think a good launch point, though, is in the Grand Gulch area. There's a ranger station, the King Gulch Ranger Station. It's open seasonally and sporadically, but that's a good place to go get information. There's a parking lot, which is, you know, that's rare out there. But, you know, you can get some information. There's a lot of canyons nearby. That's probably the best starting point.
And so you were from the Inland Empire of California, you mentioned. And so your experience with kind of that high desert is your comfort zone. Is that safe to say?
You know what, it really is, like, because when I look at the areas that I've been like intrinsically drawn to, it's really that like high desert zone pushed right up against the alpine world. And the Inland Empire is it is essentially right on the high desert and next to like the mountains of Big Bear and Baldy. So basically that landscape that was familiar to me, that I grew up with, on a much more extreme scale, less people, bigger mountains, crazier deserts. But yeah, that's my home.
Yeah, every time I see it, and that's something like Matthias and I are now in the Pacific Northwest. I split my time between Washington and Montana, and he's out in Olympia. And so, you know, we're surrounded by the rainforest. We're an hour from Mount Rainier, an hour from Olympic, an hour and a half from the coast. Like, we have all of these things. But when we went to the desert, it's just so different. It's just it's hard to describe until you're there. And I think Bears Ears especially is one of those places where it is so crowded with amazing things that, you know, the fact that it is under such attack right now is a shame, because not enough people know about it. And I'm wondering, like, is there another area that speaks to you the same as the desert Southwest?
I mean, yes, I love the high Sierras. That was the wilderness of my imagination as a kid, and I spent several years living there. You know, just a few years ago, really. I even within the mountain ranges, I'm really drawn to the high exposed alpine. I don't really like being tucked into the trees. I really like open exposed areas. And some of that I was even thinking on. I was just in Tahiti a few weeks ago as well. The jungles were beautiful, but I really liked being out on the ocean, which is kind of interesting since I'm in such dry landscapes. But the vastness of the ocean and the mysteries tucked beneath the surface really felt very similar to the desert. So I think there's some parallels there why I love it so much. But I love big mountains, and I've been lately on a roll where a couple times a year I get out and climb some big volcanoes south of the equator, and I love doing that. It's really special.
Yeah, it seems like you have been all over, but I think it's easy to say that this is a lifestyle choice for you, and not kind of, it's something that you decided to dedicate your life to doing. with going into as much or as little detail as possible, like, this is a trail running podcast, and this is kind of like, we run because of what it brings us and where it can lead us to, and we love being outside. So you grew up with being outside and you ran, but what kind of spurred on this adult exploration for you?
It really is a continuation of what I envisioned for myself as a child. And when I would initially run, I would imagine myself on like a desert safari or walking along the ridge lines that John Muir would explore in the Sierras. I kid you not. This is the stuff I would daydream about while I'd go for my little runs. And then competitive running entered my life and created like almost like 2 decades long detour. And it was amazing. Competitive running brought some incredible experiences into my life, taught me a lot about myself. It was really fun. It was rewarding. But I did reach a point right around when I turned 30 where I was still improving. I was getting faster every year, but I was like, do I really want to just keep running in circles just to get a little bit faster? I really wanted to use my running for something more enriching. And I'd always wanted to see the world, and I also wanted to be a writer. I was definitely doing a lot of writing, both personally and at the time I was working for a PR firm. But my dream since kindergarten was to write books, and to write books about adventures and travels. And I had, began dabbling in it right about the time my marriage was falling apart. And that resulted in me pretty much having to huff it and give up most everything in my life except the Jeep. And so there's no better time than when you lose everything to go for it. Like, what do you have to lose? Like, but it's like I was finally like doing what I had, nothing holding me back is really how I saw it. And there were hard times and things got lean and kind of thin. But it felt so rewarding and fulfilling every day, knowing that, I wasn't trying to juggle a million things or, do things, worry about someone else. It was really just finally time for me to focus on me. And I think it's kind of surprising that it took me so long, but at the same time, because I had held on to that dream for, most of my life, it made it so validating and like purposeful to go after it.
Yeah. And being able to see I think when you can see people who are happy with what they're doing, and that passion speaks through their work, and it's really inspiring to see, because I know like a lot of us have had similar paths of just, once things start falling apart, what's important? And then you reconnect with who you were. It's like, for me, with who I was as a kid, I was doing accounting, I was doing political consulting, and I was like, I hate this. Yeah. Like, what do I want to do? And it's just like, growing up, I went to national parks and I explored trails and I camped, and it's just like, well, that's what I want to do. How can I do that? It's just, and it's the same sort of thing. It's like, you grow up reading these works by these people and they inspire you to want to do these things. And so you keep trying to figure out how to do that. And really the only way to do it is just to take that first step. It's the same. It's the same with any trail. It's the scariest thing to do. But once you do it, you're then on this journey for good or ill. You're going to, have your ups and downs, and who knows where it's going to end up, but it's
absolutely.
There.
It's absolutely true. Yeah. And I definitely credit, reading so much from a young age and, learning about the authors that I admired and realizing that there was no singular path. And usually the books and the authors I enjoyed most, were living just, lives that obviously were not on the normal, pathway. And so that definitely instilled in me, even though I was working in a PR firm, I was at one point living in a canyon outside Yosemite with my Buick as my base. And after college, I was bouncing around people's garages and taking showers at the beach before work. I've always definitely lived kind of an alternative life, and finally just kind of put it together. I mean, like, some people get a lot of money or, invested or have, for me, the biggest asset I had was my willingness, and my love for an unusual lifestyle that could make, a lot possible with very little.
And absolutely. And it seems like you're doing, an incredible job. And I know there's probably struggles and days where it's hard, but I think
everything's like that.
Yeah, exactly. There are no easy paths for pretty much anyone. So again, I keep detracting from the trail running aspect of this podcast. That's a current theme in all 64 episodes now. So where are some places you really enjoy running? Like, is there a loop run, a 15, 20, 30 mile loop that just speaks to who you are that you want to share with people?
Yeah, running has really evolved. It's become so exploratory now. I'll fit in like just short runs, like the way people would think of a typical run. And then my other days are just I'm so often in a place I've never been before. But there are some amazing loops out of the Reds Meadow Wilderness, from Mammoth Lakes, California, out by like Thousand Island Lake and the Minarets. And both of those are like between like 14 and 18 mile outings. And my gosh, I mean, it's single track, high alpine, a little bit of cross country, but easy route finding. And, that's such an incredible run to go on.
That area is a place I know, but only from having grandparents and aunt and uncle down there. And so, and they weren't outside people. So, we would drive to the Mojave Desert or drive into the high desert around Silver Lakes and all that, and then just like drive back. And I was always like, well, what's on that ridge? Hearing that there's more out there just makes me very happy.
Incredible lakes. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Yeah, it's a good zone. You go on the JMT for part of it. Totally nice. Worth it.
All right, Matthias, your turn. I feel like I'm hogging this.
No, it's funny. I had a question queued up, and then you asked a question, so you were sort of reading my mind, which I suppose means you've earned your title as good co-host for a few episodes. I get to
stick around as co-host.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
You heard it here first, everyone.
Yeah.
No, wait, I do have one. I was joking, but I actually do have one. So, we're talking about making adventure a lifestyle and turning it into full-time experience. But for the people who know that they can't swing that, do you have some ideas of how to bring adventure to your regular life, how to find adventure, carve out moments that need to give you that fulfillment, and perhaps eventually they pull you completely from your ordinary life. But for some people, adventure is a part-time gig, it's a weekend gig. And do you have some ideas for people that love adventure, but they can't necessarily make that a full-time habit?
Yeah. I mean, so, at its core, I really view adventure as like a philosophy rather than like a thing. Like, I don't really go out like seeking adventure, but the way that I go about things inevitably puts it in my path. But really, like, I love Yvon Chouinard's quote, adventure only happens when something goes wrong. But things go wrong quite a bit. I mean, of course, depending on your outlook. And I really think one of the things, is no matter where you are, like, view things as like, I don't know, I like to see the humor in things and like see things as a story, and like adventures can happen in your town and in your day to day. And, if you're willing to see kind of like things kind of falling apart as a new creative challenge, that can bring a lot of the adventurous spirit into your daily life, because that's really what's happening. When you go on a hike in the desert and you run out of water and you make a wrong turn, really you're having the same day as someone having a flat tire or, breaking your iPhone and like all your food in your fridge went bad or something. Like that's really how I see it. And so that adventurous spirit can be used anywhere, but also I really like to encourage people to get out and explore like the public lands and parks, and wild places close to the backyard. For me growing up, there was a cool little trail system just like down the road, and that was like my place to explore. And there were, little mini canyons and pools with tadpoles, and I had so many adventures just, monkeying around in this like 10 square mile area of trails not far from home. And so really, and even for people who do have the ability to adventure and really get out far and wide, looking into your like local adventures and like, you know, getting a sense of place for where you live, but also looking into how you can be like a steward and a contributor to your local area. That helps create like that just community of like caring for our wild, beautiful places, that can spread and be infectious.
That's perfect. Absolutely. I think people, especially we've talked about this on this podcast quite a bit. How there's sort of two types of runners, and some of them, approach it very much from an athletic performance point of view. And they're trying to best their time, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's the outlook, if that's what they're after. I think whatever gets you out the door is good. But I think we definitely, Doug and I, partially do because we're approaching that age where it's harder to really be excited about the times we're running. But also,
that's okay.
Exactly right. But
at any age, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's cool. I think back about the times that I ran fast, but they really don't carry much weight when it's over, like at all.
No, and it's like, it's sort of the stories that we're writing, the experience that we're gaining in our life, the things that we're seeing, they're so precious, and we have to hold on to them and find ways of accumulating them and capturing them, because they enrich us and they make us who we are, right?
Yeah.
Also,
Absolutely.
I'm still hungry for a burrito, by the way.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to get yourself a burrito.
I know. I'm very hungry.
Yeah. Half the time. Last week we talked about grilling.
Nice.
We have an entire episode where we talked about baking bread. So,
cool.
if you ever want a bread recipe, definitely reach out to Matthias. He's supposedly working on a bread book, but we'll see if that happens.
A bread book, an entire book baked out of
made
bread.
of bread that you can eat as you turn the page. It's a perfect idea.
Oh my God, I will buy that book. I'm pre-order right now. Oh my God.
Well, baking on the road is tough though, right? Because you can get an open fire and you get a hot surface, but it's hard to get an oven.
Yeah, so little known fact, when I was in college and I strangely enough bounced around living situations all the time. Imagine that, like a couple different places a year and different garages and whatnot. But I kind of always earned my keep cooking for the people I lived with. And I was huge into baking bread. And so I would make all my bread from scratch, and I would cook everything from bulk, and I would be able to like pull off like these incredible meals on like a college kid's budget. And that was like, if I wasn't running or doing my schoolwork, which was, I was in a writing program. So I was either writing or running or baking bread. I love it. But I have pretty much all but given up on the road and given in to tortillas because I have a high standard, and I'm not going to like spend all day trying to tinker with bread over a campfire. It can be done, but
yeah,
I'm
really
a little too busy for that.
Yeah, it turns it into cooked dough, which can be delicious if you're desperate, but baking bread needs a baking stone and a really hot oven and a sourdough.
I agree.
Well, what's great about the bread, and that's why I love it, and Doug's laughing because now I'm already hijacking the podcast and talking about bread again. No, but it is this making something incredible out of super cheap ingredients with very, very little, right? I mean, yes, you need the time and you need to understand sort of the materials you work with, the ingredients, but the beauty of the results when you started with nothing but flour and water, and then you have this delicious outcome, and it's sort of a metaphor of what you can do with your life. You don't,
absolutely.
Right? You don't need a ski season pass resort living in order to experience the outdoors. There are ways of getting out there that can be where you can experience incredible things, where you doing something out of very little.
Absolutely, that's definitely my philosophy as well.
You see, the bread life, Douglas. The bread life.
I know. I'm not knocking it. You've gotten me to start cooking pretzels and things like that. So yeah. Matthias has a great pretzel recipe that he lifted from somewhere else.
It's
Sounds awesome.
so I just recently learned that you can't copyright recipes, so therefore you cannot.
Oh, you cannot. Okay.
Nope.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Nope. So
Well, there you go. Your book's already written.
everything
it's
is
just
fair game.
Well, in that case, when are you going to write your burrito book? Yes.
Well, first I have to actually eat a few burritos.
Yeah, you're gonna do some research.
No,
I think
and
burritos is more of a southern thing, more of a hot climate type thing, right?
It is. Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, like, I love bread, like, oh man, especially homemade bread. But when it's really hot, like, I don't know, it doesn't keep that well as tortillas. And yeah, just, there's something about it that lends well to the hotter climate with tortillas.
Yeah, no, I think that there's something true to where good food tastes great when you place it into the right place. I mean, it's the same thing with wine. I'm more of a wine drinker than a beer drinker, but I think winemakers who will really understand where wine is being made and paired it with the right kind of food, you achieve a different experience.
Totally.
Than if you just sort of lift it out of its place and try to sort of, living in urban cities, you find any restaurant anywhere about any flavor, but it doesn't feel the same way than if you eat it in a certain meal in a place where it actually comes from,
definitely.
Right?
No, that's. Oh, go ahead.
I would say that's one of the strange things about cities and American culture. You go there and you can get almost anything. And there's a place for that. I mean, I love getting, some good Thai food in Denver, whatever. But, it's special to eat the food from the place. And that was something that my mom really instilled in my family growing up. We lived in Southern California. And we were raised as vegan, and her big thing was that the cheapest, most nutritious, most delicious thing that we could eat was the food that was kind of the closest to the region. And, she felt like we were pretty close to Mexico, and we had so many great Mexican ingredients at our disposal. And she would make homemade tortillas every day and homemade beans. And I'm actually making some homemade beans right now as we speak. And, it's just really simple and nutritious. But instead of trying to ship in all this stuff from far away, like, what could we eat that actually can grow out here? It makes the most sense. The vegetables and the fruits that grow in this area are going to actually taste the best.
So do you have a good recipe to make homemade tortillas?
I do. That's something I've really only dabbled with, but really it's the same kind of thing. It's like flour and water and salt and fat. For flour tortillas, and then corn tortillas don't require fat, just the masa and the water and some salt. And get that dough going and put it on a hot skillet. It is definitely possible to make tortillas when you're camping, but again, it's just like I've been on the go so much.
No, exactly.
It's something I've definitely considered, though.
There's a little bit of a law of diminishing returns, I feel like, meaning if you make something that you can get really, really well done in a grocery store for a great price, it's hard to justify making it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, homemade tortillas are light years. Once you have them, you do not want the store-bought ones. But again, there is an element of my life, it's a weird, combination of trying to simplify things and do it yourself and not be so reliant on convenience, but then I am extremely reliant on convenience because if I can make a good healthy meal and if I can whip up a burrito in under 5 minutes, which is definitely possible, and just eat, I mean, that's how I get a lot of stuff done. I'm not wasting time. Not that's wasted, because cooking a meal for your friends, but every day I'm not cooking these elaborate meals. It can be, my life can be very utilitarian. I'm eating, I'm getting somewhere, and then suddenly, especially when you're outside, you have X amount of hours of daylight to be productive. It's incredible. So yeah, God bless this grocery store tortillas for that.
And so when you're out on your adventures, are you bringing tortillas or are you bringing burritos out with you for the majority, or do you also have other go-to snacks that you enjoy?
burritos, I mean, they're always different. So it's just, whatever I have wrapped in a tortilla. That's a pretty big staple. I mean, I also don't always use tortillas. I make like rice bowls and like potato and veggie like sautés and scrambles, like a lot of one pot meals, and just will literally eat them out of the cast iron. That's in pasta dishes, just simple food, but then the leftovers can be wrapped up in a tortilla and taken with you on an adventure. My other big go-to is leftover pizza and putting it in carrying it with me because it tastes good cold. It can get a little hot in the sun. It's fine. I love whether it's homemade pizza, frozen pizza, gas station pizza. Yeah, it all does the trick.
Doesn't matter as long as it's pizza. It's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle upbringing.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, and there's I just have a huge sliding scale. I've eaten probably some of the worst and some of the best pizza, and at the moment, it was good.
That's good.
Yeah.
The good combination of gooey cheese and acidity from the tomato sauce and carbs from the dough. Yeah, I see that.
And salt.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I hope everyone else is as hungry as we are now.
Yeah.
I think this is
I know that's a torture episode. If you listen to that episode while out running or so, then you're probably like, where's the closest gas station? I need a stop right now.
Yeah, I might need a second burrito for lunch. Gosh.
All right, Matthias, did you have anything else?
I think I've got all my burrito and related food questions answered. This was incredible. Thank you for your time. No, it was great getting to know you and getting to know your sort of
fun talking to you guys
philosophy and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's nice for you to take the time out of your day, and I know we will have all the links to your stuff in our show notes. Is there anything else you want to plug? Upcoming works. I know you have some tours that you do. This will be posted on Thursday or Friday. So
next Tuesday I'm going to be speaking at Fisher Brewing in Salt Lake City to help raise money for Grand Staircase Partners. And also right now there's a link in my Instagram bio. If you join Grand Staircase Escalante Partners and you list my name as the donate in behalf of, they'll mail you a free pint glass. And if you bring it to the event, or if you go to the event and join, they'll give you a free beer as well. But really I want to push that because I think a lot of people ask me well, what can I do? Donating your time and whether that's working on the ground or volunteering is incredible. But I realized that's just not an option for a lot of people. I am amazed what people juggle, especially if they have kids or careers in cities or commutes. It's mind boggling, especially because it's just so drastically different from my life. And I didn't actually push this a lot last year because I was in a place financially where even thinking about donating $30 or $35 wasn't realistic. But honestly, $35 for most people, that's a dinner out. That's
a week at Starbucks.
That's a couple of beers at the bar. It's something you could definitely swap. A conservation group that is able to put people on the ground and rally up volunteers to work for the places you love is such a great way, especially with Grand Staircase and Bears Ears. The conservation groups are really the ones doing the heavy lifting with the lawsuits, and so they definitely do need funds to continue that work. I'm happy to be able to help Grand Staircase because they definitely haven't been quite in the media the way Bears Ears has, and that monument was 20 years established. So the local communities have the most to lose. The monument's been protected. Suddenly it's losing protection, and it's definitely being explored for exploitive uses like oil and coal and different types of mining. And so I think it's one of those that we all need to hone in on and help protect.
Fantastic. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, I need to donate. And then I was like, oh no, I didn't do it, but I'm glad that's still an opportunity.
Oh, so, I don't keep going for a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's something, we'll have a link in the show notes to that as well. And,
cool.
And definitely, anytime, there are issues, you're talking about it on your social media feeds. And we appreciate that, because we're all in this together for our public lands, because without these, I think they've helped shape the three of us and most of our listeners, if not all of our listeners, in everything we do, that, we have to be fighting for these, and we have to be advocating and supporting each other when we have these things. So again, we appreciate you coming on, taking time out of your day. Everybody should follow you and support the outdoors community.
Oh, thank you guys. It's really good to talk to you. It's nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll probably see you around at OR or something. So.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. This last one about broke me. It's really hard for me you're like, everyone's there because they love the outdoors, and we're crammed like cattle into these narrow slot canyons of brands and, $100,000 booths. And there's a lot that I struggle with there. Mostly the inside part, but I think it's inevitable. I'll be at the next one.
You and me both. There's a running joke that when Matthias and I go into a city together, that I freeze up and lock up because I'm not comfortable there. Because I'm like, there's too many people, there's buildings, there's pavement. What is this?
I just have to convince myself that it's an adventure. When people are like, oh, your life's so adventurous, aren't you afraid? I'm like, I am terrified driving on the highway in Denver, and trying to navigate parking and or airports. It's just like, that's really some scary shit.
There is one more. So I want to cover this because this was the most amazing thing. So you were traveling forever. You went to Tahiti, and then you flew back to the States and had probably one of the most entertaining adventures I had seen on Instagram stories. What happened with that trip?
Yeah, it is kind of funny. You go all the way to Patagonia, and then you go straight to Tahiti, and like the adventure begins when you get to LAX. And you took a red eye, and like I had like an hour layover, and then I was supposed to like be flying back to a small town in Colorado where I left my Jeep. And like they're like, oh, it's delayed, then it's canceled. Then we had to wait in this long line. I told them I just wanted to cancel my flight, and I'd rent a car, and I just wanted to get back. I was like, all I want to do is get in a car and drive somewhere, get the hell out of these cities, get the hell out of the airport. I just want to be on the open road and go camp somewhere beautiful and get back to my life. Well, they were like, oh no, we want to put you up in a Hilton. We'll put you on a plane in the middle of the night. Everything's going to be fine. So I'm on another red eye to Dallas, which Lord knows why I'm going to Dallas. I get there just as we're about to board the plane. They tell us, like, we're in line to get on. They're like, oh, your flight's canceled. And I can tell you, American Airlines, they lie to people. It's pretty terrible. And I lost it. I was like, I will not be held prisoner in your airport any longer. Like, stop lying to us. And they had like already rebooked my flight for the next day. I'm like, how long do you think I want to stay in your airports?
Wow.
Where you're going to fly me to Miami next? And a few other people were like, yeah, we're with her. So we like rented a van, 5 strangers, and drove from Dallas to Durango, Colorado, a 12-hour drive. Could not be more different. People from Tennessee, Florida, and Dallas, and myself. And we went out for family barbecue and told stories and laughed and sang country songs. It was the highlight of my entire trip. And that's meeting people on the road and travels and through these, like, you could see it as a fiasco and like an airline disaster, but really, like, that's what adventure is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. It looked like so much frustration and then so much fun. So.
I really don't think I'll ever fly American Airlines again. One of the women on our bus or on our van was an American Airlines stewardess, and like no one was more upset than she was. Like,
oh wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Guess I'm not going to get any flights from them ever in my life, but I wouldn't even take one for free at this point.
Well, this is when we awkwardly tell you that they're our main No, they're not our main
That's
sponsor.
Fine. Sorry. You can delete that. I mean, that's that bad. Like a flight from them means like they're just going to hold you in their airport till they're ready to send you somewhere else. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have my own stories with American, and I saw 3 or 4 other people that same time that you were traveling with major issues. And I was like, yep, that's terrible. But everybody made the most of it, and I think that kind of, speaks volumes to who you are as a person and what you're putting out into the world. So I wanted to tell that story because it's kind of a way to show that you're an optimistic person, even with some very frustrating things. So with that, we greatly appreciate you taking the time, like we've said a bunch, and we look forward to talking to you again at some point. And if you're ever up in Washington or Montana, let us know. We'll hook you up with
great.
a place to park.
Oh, you guys are sweet. Yeah, let me know if you ever make it out to the Four Corners, and I can definitely recommend some good places to go.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Fantastic.
All right, have a great day, you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan.
Bye.